So welcome to a three-part mini webinar series put together by Mural. This is in response to drastically changing conditions we're facing in the world today. And really, this is our way of responding to our friends and collaborators worldwide that we're reaching out and saying we could really use some help suddenly going remote. So in this first section, we're going to focus on the very fundamentals, which are kind of the tools, conceptual ways to approach your tool selection that you need for suddenly working remote. And Haley and I will be kind of passing it back and forth today as we bounce through these topics. My name is Mark Tippin. I'm head of services with Mural, and Haley is our services lead. Together, we're going to be with you for the next 30 minutes. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about how we should approach this, Haley.
Absolutely. So we want to make sure you guys walk out of this session feeling like you have some of these urgent questions answered. So first, we want to start by taking a deep breath. Feels really good because we want you guys to realize that this is a problem a lot of people are experiencing, and we are here to help. Make sure you have lots. We know you have lots of questions. Let's make sure we answer them. So you can either use the chat to share any links to anything, any thoughts, any concerns. And if you have questions, we invite you to use the Q&A panel at the bottom of your Zoom screen so that you can, and that's something we can revisit at the end of our time together. And finally, we want to remind everybody that, of course, working together is really important, but we also want to remind you that if you're feeling sick, definitely make sure that you take the time you need to get some rest and to recover, because that is when you work your best, is when you're feeling good and healthy. So what are we going to talk about today, Mark, and through this series?
Yeah, so what was this series all about? Really, we wanted to come up with a format that was very short and succinct. So there are half-hour sections. We try and pack them full of the information you need so that they're also easy to share. Hopefully this information is something that you find valuable and that you might need to share with teammates or relatives or anyone that might be suddenly needing to be productive. And so that's why the short format and really just focusing on the essentials. We understand there's lots of reasons why you might be here today. Haley, you can kind of outline some of those.
So some of those reasons that you're here, of course, and a lot of obvious ones that are the travel disruptions. We've heard a lot of companies starting to put travel bans down. So, or even in a regular year, you can't travel to an office location where you need to be. So face-to-face meetings can't happen. Also, of course, health concerns. A lot of companies are experiencing the impacts of coronavirus, the flu, other seasonal challenges that are keeping you out of the office. And then hopefully a lot of you guys might also be here because you realize that in the face of all of this going on, remote work is a big part of work culture going forward. And you want to think about, how do we make this work for our team, or how do we work better together with people around the world? And so if that's whatever your reason is, we hope that we can answer some of your questions and your concerns.
So in addition to the information that we're going to share here, we're also going to provide a link to this canvas, which works almost like a template or a work book for you to have certain discussions with your teams. The video recording will be available and posted online. If you signed up for the webinar, you'll be getting those links, that information. Your questions, we ask that you use chat. We're going to really just share information for 30 minutes. And then after that, we're going to stay on as long as necessary and answer any questions that are available. But really, we're going to stay focused on the 30 minutes being information that's shared out so that, that we don't waste time doing answering questions here, but then the blog post will also capture all of that information across the three series and make sure that that's available. We also acknowledge that part of the building out your digital workspace is you might need to be exploring a tool like Mural. And so we invite you to join us for 90 days free. If you sign up for a Mural account, find the chat bot that's in the lower right-hand corner and just reach out to one of our support agents, and they'll talk you through how that happens. But we realize that you're exploring all sorts of new things. This isn't all just about Mural, but Mural is one of the components that can really help. So we want to give you every possibility to add that and explore and see how that can be used with your team. All right, I think we've made the point. Let's give an overview
Yeah.
of what our 3 days are going to be like and where we are.
Yeah, they're pretty action packed. So we realize a lot of you are here because you might be unsure about how to work together when you're not in the office or in different locations. So today we're talking about the 5 tools or the 5 capabilities we're going to review too of what you need in your digital workspace. We're going to follow up tomorrow, same time, same place, with building a productive remote working culture, and then give you guys some methods that you can use to make online meetings fantastic and engaging. And that's the third webinar. And hopefully by the end of this series, you guys have some of your questions answered. You know the knowledge, you have some knowledge, and you know the tools you need to address some of these immediate pressing challenges around remote work. But then we also hope you keep your mind open to the possibility of how you can transform your culture at your company and working together. So if you guys are ready to join us for this journey, hopefully since you're here, I'm going to have Mark take you through the 5 capabilities that your team needs to work remote.
Wonderful. So when we teach remote facilitation in our courses, the first conversation is around tools, but tools really we want to deal with it at a conceptual level, not necessarily like just brand names. Go buy these tools, because these tools have very specific purposes that they solve for remote teams. So one of the needs that a team one of the requirements or capabilities that a team needs is to be able to communicate in real time. Chances are these are solutions that you've already been exploring if you're suddenly finding yourself remote. So this is video conferencing software. And the reason why this is probably the first thing that comes to mind is because once you're suddenly not able to be co-located with your team, first thing you realize is you need that ability to actually just talk and communicate, right? So finding the way to add that capability back into your remote situation is fairly obvious. What's not often obvious is the value of asynchronous communication. Right. So what do I mean by this? This is communication that we're all introduced to originally through email. Right. I have a thought, I can put it in an email, I send it to you. It's in your inbox until you can get to it and you get back to me. One of the challenges of using email is still, we use it and it's a very common thing. One of the challenges is when you have many threaded bits of communications with many different teams. So hence the rise of tools like Slack and Teams and these threaded conversation tools. So that allows you to carry on many asynchronous communications. This also works really well across time zones. The third capability you need is you need agreement around where you're going to be sharing your content. This could be Box, Dropbox, whatever. But the large files that everyone needs access to could be code, right? Where are you going to put your code? Where are you going to check stuff in? Just needs to be agreement about where that's going to be. Fourth capability is staying organized. So when you're collaborating together and these tools are helping you come together, generate ideas, evaluate, prioritize, make decisions, and then you want the action items and the decisions that the team has made to be tracked somewhere. So there are many tools that allow you to not only keep track of them, but make it very transparent to the team about who's making progress and being agile in response to changing circumstances. If you need to shift work around, you know who to talk to, who's been assigned what. The fifth capability you need is you need some space where you can think and work and co-create visually. And this is, for us, clearly, Mural is the space where we can come together. Not only can we see each other using Zoom, but Mural gives us the ability for us to see what each other means.
Awesome. So let's dive in a little bit more. I think we've outlined the capabilities, but what does this look like and why is it important? So here is, I mentioned, like a digital toolbox that we're going to dive into. And let me start with communicating in real time. So communication in real time for a remote team is essential Mark and I, for example, are both remote workers. He's based in Oregon, I'm in California. And this is our way of connecting for having a community is to meet face to face and discuss things as much as possible. So, for example, you'll see here lots of, we always have our video camera on. It's great to have that human connection, be able to read people's body language and their facial expressions. And then we also like to share our screen a lot in Zoom, in our tool of choice at Mural, which is Zoom. And that also helps, I think, with a lot of clarification. So a lot of times we hear remote work. If I'm working out of the office, it's easy for people to get confused about what I mean. And this really helps eliminate or reduce the communication issues as much as possible. So that's why we communicate on Zoom and how we do it in real time.
Wonderful. Let's face it. I also the real time face-to-face synchronous communication is also efficient. If you're sending 3 or 4 emails back and forth, you might be better served just by having that conversation in real time and working through all the details. Unlike that real-time communication, though, communicating asynchronously has tremendous benefits, especially for remote teams. Um, uh, Using one place to have all of these multiple threads of communications is, it has so many benefits. It's clear to see why these things have become successful. Kind of augmenting email and that more formal type of communication with something where you have the transient messaging capability. Um, the additional benefits, especially if you're remote, that can often mean remote within a building where you don't have the ambient someone just walking by your desk or seeing that you're there, even if you're working on separate floors, which I've done in enterprise before. I'm in the same building, but I still don't have a sense of where people are. But using presence through these tools, I get a sense of when someone's there at their desk. I can ping them and ask a quick question. But what happens when you're distributed around the globe? That's where these type of asynchronous tools have a whole other level of capability for you to actually pass off and hand off and ask questions to people in other time zones where you might not have a natural overlap. Um, but really, also, it's a way to build community. So not only do individual departments within your organization have a space to have a conversation, marketing, development, that type of thing. But if you're outside those teams, you have a sense, even if you don't know who to ask a question of, this adds some structure so I know where to ask the question. Right? So if I'm trying to track down a resource and we've had a lot of hires in a particular org, I can go into that org and just innocently ask a quick question, get quickly routed to the right resource there. And it builds community. There are all sorts of transient initiatives, little things that are super urgent, but they have a very short time frame, and they need people to kind of rally around a particular topic, get that done, and then it can kind of dissolve. These tools are excellent for putting something out there and then creating community almost magically from the people that are in that tool.
Yeah. And it's fun too with community. It doesn't have to necessarily be all work related. We have a channel at Mural, one of many of our fun channels called Dogs, where people can just post pictures of their pets frolicking on the beach. Or we have one for cats as well, cats and dog lovers all around. But when you're missing that connection with your coworkers, you can build those kind of spaces, digital spaces for people to connect.
That's right. I also like we have one called Yelling, which is just really human and really honest. It's like it's no holes barred, whatever you want to say. It's a safe place just to rant about whatever you need to and like get it off your chest. And so it's
Mhm.
really, really fun how dynamic a seemingly kind of simple, straightforward tool like this that has a specific business purpose is really embraced and adds to the culture of remote teams.
Really does. Fantastic. So now you guys know how to communicate in real time and asynchronously. But it's also really important to think about where all of the information is coming from and how you're exchanging information for projects, for just getting work done. So it's great to decide what tools you're going to use to share content. So that could be video, documents, code, anything like that. So it's important to have this because when we're working remote, there might be a tendency to just store stuff on your personal device, which is okay, but then you don't know who has the most recent version. Maybe you have one version that you think is most relevant and recent, and someone else has one, and you have to work up later to combine efforts. But trust me, if you are open to sharing everything in one shared space, like we use Google Drive, it makes the work a lot more transparent. It makes things much more collaborative. And you don't have to worry about the back channeling or trying to figure out what's the most recent version. Plus, a great thing about sharing content, this overlaps really well with how we use Slack, which is to collaborate on pieces of work to share information. And so it saves us a lot of time and energy figuring out what's the most recent version and the source of truth.
That's right. We also can iterate. I used to take a thing and just want to polish it all by myself until it was perfect. And working transparency like this, putting out a draft, getting feedback early on, and really getting into this iterative mindset makes the final product not only something that's more robust, but also allows buy-in along the way as you're kind of co-creating these documents.
Definitely. All right. Staying organized.
All right. So the fourth thing that you need to be able to do as a team is when you make decisions, is you need some way to track them, right? And there can be uh, specific tools to do this, like an Asana or a Trello, if you have a backlog type thing. Or even within Mural, we have teams like our team that uses what's on your radar. So it's a visual way for us to track all of the different segments and areas that we are responsible for, and getting a sense of what's front burner, middle burner, and out on the horizon. But this transparency is what's important. So at any point, no matter where you are, you can kind of see the status. If you wrap up something a little early, there's team protocol about where to go and what else might need your help and coordination. So inside Mural right now, we use Asana and Mural most frequently, but there are lots of very interesting tools out there, including things like Lucid Meeting that really handles the entire range of structuring meetings, building agendas, and maintaining accountability and action items and stuff as well. So lots of interesting tools to help teams stay organized.
Mhm. And something to think about too when you decide what tools you use are those integrations between tools. So, like for example, Slack, we can integrate Google, um, the Google Drives, Google Suite, and Mural integrates with Jira so that you can update tasks and to-do lists there as well. So, always good to think about how well your tools work together. All right, and your fifth, last but certainly not least, of course, close to our hearts at Mural, is thinking visually. So this is in you have all these tools at your disposal to keep yourselves organized, to be able to make connections. But what about clarifying concepts? How do we know that we're on the same page about an idea, or that something makes sense to people in different cultures and different locations? Mural in our lives and in our work, we truly believe that working visually helps you go from I see you in terms like I see you on the video chat, or I see you in face to face, to I see what you mean. I understand what you're saying, and we are on the same page. And at Mural, we use, of course, our tool in lots of different ways. So it could be something really structured, like here we have a journey map, and it makes our remote sessions and remote workshops a lot more engaging and fun and clearly organized. To a lot of times, we just open a Mural canvas, we're having a discussion as a team, and you can see a bunch of us are building out this diagram at the same time. And what that does is it does help create clarity, but it also, as Mark mentioned earlier, gives us a sense of ownership and when we get to co-create together. So that's why working visually in my mind, and of course, as the mission of our company, is to help power work like this from any location. And honestly, it's pretty fun. Like I think we have the best jobs in the world getting to work visually all day.
Yeah, and I think it's it's that serious play aspect to it. Doing the work in the meeting was a great takeaway from recently a conference we attended in Austin, Control the Room, and they
Mhm.
had these truisms about what makes a really impactful, effective meeting. And the thing that adds to healthy team culture and engagement and all these things is the fact that you get to co-create. It's not one person driving the PowerPoint and everyone else is passively watching. But as Haley pointed out, you can be very structured in the way you're going to go through a very almost like a workshop approach with steps and time boxing. But even when you're having casual conversations, augmenting what you're saying with someone else capturing the notes and being able to reflect and kind of refine meaning and negotiate reality together. Very impactful. But this, in and of itself, is just one tool. And I think that's why if we backed out again and we just look at the 5 tools, then you can get a sense of how all of these things really form the foundation of a digital workspace. Right? It's not any one of these individually, but for successful remote teams in our experience, it's the ability to, one, have the discussion with your team right away and agree. Maybe you need to start working with the tools that you have right now, but you'll want to research and try and find a way conceptually to do each one of these things. You need some way. Now there are hacks. You can share a Google Doc and people can log into that, right? There's very low tech ways of doing and solving each one of these things. But it's just important that you align on which ones you're going to use so people know where to find stuff. They know where to ask questions. They know when this meeting is going to happen, um, uh, making sure software installed and all that type of thing. So all 5 of these together are what you need. So this template is something we're going to be sharing with you, and it'll help you kind of have this conversation with your teams and identify which ones you need, which ones might work best for you.
Great. So that basically, when I realized that we have a bunch of questions, and we're definitely going to take some time to answer those and stay on the line longer to address the Q&A. And I want to make sure we have some time during our session here too to do that. But to give you guys a sense of where we're going next, we finished up this session today, short and sweet, 5 tools you need in your digital workspace. And tomorrow we're going to talk to you more about building a productive remote working culture. So, how does your team decide to align and to really gather in a digital way when you can't be in the office? And what can that look like for your team and as an individual? So, with that, thank you guys so much for joining. We'll definitely get to the Q&A in the next couple minutes. But again, if you're new to this way of working, of course, we love if Mural is part of that workspace that you're creating. And we invite you to sign up to use Mural for 90 days free, when usually it's only 30 days. And what you'll do is go to mural.co. You'll see this little chatbot pop up when you sign up, and that'll ask you if you've been impacted by the recent events, the coronavirus, and one of our agents will be there to help you out. So, with that, thank you so much, guys. We hope that you guys stay healthy, you stay productive, and you're ready to explore the power of remote work and visual working together.